The Alfa Special Forces unit of Ukraine's security service carried out strikes on areas where Russian military personnel and equipment were concentrated in the occupied territories. The nighttime attacks were conducted using FP-2 unmanned aerial vehicles equipped with 105-kilogram warheads, ensuring high operational effectiveness. As a result of the strikes, a significant number of Russian troops and various military equipment were destroyed, and the houses and command posts where the occupiers had gathered were also blown up and disabled.
An article published by independent Russian outlet Verstka alleges that commanders in multiple Russian units on the Ukrainian front are carrying out summary executions of their own soldiers or forcing them into suicide assaults if they refuse orders, a practice troops themselves call nullification and execution by attack. Verstka's investigation compiles testimonies from soldiers and relatives, as well as complaints sent to Russia's main military prosecutor's office. It describes cases where men who declined to join assaults were shot at point-blank range in their own trenches, or sent forward without armor or weapons under threat from blocking detachments behind them, United 24 media outlet says. From the very start of the full-scale invasion, by 2025, executions and torture have become more sophisticated, the reporters write, citing troops who say commanders get rid of unwanted men by ordering meat assaults that few survive. There, you never know who will shoot you, your own or the Ukrainians. One serviceman is quoted as saying, specific allegations in the report include a commander who kept a specially trained person for nullification, described by a mobilized soldier named Alexei. During assaults, that subordinate was tasked to lift 10 men and send them forward, and if anyone refused after seeing the conditions, he shot them point blank with an automatic rifle, after which bodies were dumped into the Siversky Donets River or buried nearby, the outlet reports. Ukrainian intelligence and independent media have repeatedly publicized intercepted calls and field reports describing the revival of barrier troops, units that block retreats with lethal force. In June 2025, Kiev Post reported an intercept in which Russian soldiers discussed recruiters coming to us to enlist men for barrier units, a World War II-era tactic, with one participant responding that such recruiters were total scumbags who should be shot right away. Danish outlet Dagens highlighted the Verstka findings, reporting that Russian soldiers who refuse sacrificial attacks risk being shot or executed by attack, aligning with the terminology and cases described in the Russian investigation. Earlier, Ukrainian military reports showed Russian soldiers killing their own wounded on the battlefield, including executions by shooting or beating. In some cases, Russian commanders were run over by mutinous forces during the fighting in Ukraine in a sign of what they described as the morale challenges faced by the invading forces. Western countries believe that Russian forces are suffering from increasingly poor morale as they incur heavy losses in the fighting. Russian propagandist Yevgeny Golman published a new tirade in which he unexpectedly acknowledged the obvious. Russia is rapidly losing ground, both domestically and internationally. His monologue, full of irritation and despair, became a kind of cross-section of the mood among Kremlin supporters, who increasingly speak of the impotence of the government and the degradation of the army. In his video, Golman complained about Moscow's loss of influence in neighboring states and that Central Asian countries are turning toward the United States. Now, Trump wants to fly over all the southern republics, offer them a candy, and it will begin. It's already begun. Kazakhstan is already switching to American weapons, planes are flying, embassies are being built. Everything is going great for them. They respect the strong, the blogger declared. He then moved on to desperate reproaches against the Russian authorities and the army, admitting that the occupiers are experiencing a shortage of equipment and drones. When are we going to give them a slap? When? What are we waiting for? We recognized the Taliban in Afghanistan. They won. We recognized them. Assad was defeated, and now we're sitting down at the negotiating table with them. No one's sitting down with us. We need to resolve the customs issues. There are no Mavics. How are the boys going to go on reconnaissance missions? What's going on? Enemies are all around, Golman exclaimed. In general, Kremlin propagandists say that the current course of events does not rule out the disintegration of the country. The propagandist's words sounded like an admission of the failure of Kremlin policy and the moral burnout of the propaganda apparatus. His outburst demonstrates a growing understanding, even within the system, that Russia is losing control of the situation and the myth of its greatness is finally crumbling. Earlier, Golman harshly criticized the authorities for preferring to feign calm instead of making decisions. And we're all tee ha ha. Peskov's telling us how our economy is doing. What economy? People are being killed every day, he declared. The propagandist complained that the Kremlin was ignoring the war, but at the same time called on the authorities to introduce a counter-terrorism operation. We're at war. Everything's fighting against us. And we're kissing. Not us, of course. Not the people, but the government, he said. He was particularly irritated by US President Donald Trump's stance. Golman called him a slacker and accused him of authorizing the firing of long-range missiles and would soon allow the Ukrainian armed forces to also use Tomahawks. In his emotional speech, the blogger also complained about the lack of weapons and the collapse of industry. We have everything, all the metals, but for some reason we don't have machine gun barrels. When did they ever change the barrels on tanks? They forgot, he declared. The culmination was his admission of the massive losses of the Russian army at the front. 1,000 to 1,500 die a day, and they don't care. This figure sounds like a public confirmation of the catastrophic situation in the troops, which is usually carefully concealed by the Russian authorities. Golman's speech was yet another sign of the growing crisis of trust within the Russian propaganda field. Even ardent supporters of the war are beginning to speak out loud about the Kremlin's failure and the authorities' impotence in the face of reality.